and set an exit, broadly speaking, fair and objective. Even this country's policy to Bangladesh is biased in infrastructure building. When I say infrastructure, I don't mean physically. It is an opportunity for our speakers to set a vision. We need to be talking, and at the same time, with a diverse range of thinking, and not just in budget. And yet I can easily double. If my son really likes me, every day he says that I want you to tell me stories. And when I was preparing this, it was almost after midnight. But if nothing else, 160 million people surely must have some value. We all are busy. We can do. Don't get involved every day, but decide for yourself what you can do. If you can give some quality, structured, no record from, so it's rather unsettling for people like me to speak. But I hope
that was out of good intentions, no malice intended. Thank you very much.
I think you are a good topic. We have to make sure that we give all the speakers fair amount that the country is suffering from, either being on the left or being on the right. So we want to make sure this is not a protest meeting. We know a lot of bad things is happening in Bangladesh. Too much time on introducing him, but I think it's important for Bangladesh. But I'm pleased to tell you we have an advisor, and also he has received Sheikh Hasina's treatment recently. Fortunately, they have sent him to UK so that we can have him here.
In 5 minutes. I haven't practiced this speech, so I don't know when I go over 5 minutes. Please remind me. Jatiya Party's stance on this particular election is what any democracy-loving citizen of the country's stance should be about this election. This election is not going to be a democratic election. Do any of you doubt that? Does anybody have a doubt? No. Doesn't matter what party you support. It doesn't matter. Okay? Doesn't matter Army League, BNP, or any other smaller party. Doesn't matter what party you support. You know that this election is not going to be a democratic election. An election in which more than 50% of the seats are chosen before a vote is cast. 50% of the MPs are elected before a vote is cast cannot be a democratic election. So why isn't Jatiya Party going to the election? Simply because it's not a democratic election. Now there's been a lot of controversy about why Jatiya Party is not going, or is it going, is it not going. From the very beginning, Jatiya Party's central party stance has been quite clear. The central party stance has been that the party is not partaking this election. Some members, even many members of the party, if they go participate in the election, doesn't mean the party is participating in the election. Because there are certain rules and regulations. For the party to participate in the election, the party's central governing body, has to agree to participate in this election. Right? The central governing body of the Jatiya Party has not once come out as saying that they are participating in this election. There are multiple members, certainly, and there are multiple members who have already become members of parliament before the day of the actual election, the 5th of January. So, even if 30, 50, 80 members of the Jatiya Party become elected MPs in this particular parliamentary election, the Jatiya Party as a party is not participating in this election.
The other point that I think I was asked to make was Hussain Mohammad Ershad's contradictory positions. Now, I'm not going to talk about all positions he has taken all over his life, okay? Because that's going to be a sticky wicket right there. But I'm going to talk about this election. And as far as this election is concerned, from the very beginning, he has said he's not going to participate in an election that's not all-inclusive and not free and fair. Now, the definition of free and fair can be very difficult indeed. So let's keep it simple. As far as free and fair, we are talking about an election where all of the major political parties are taking part, where every voter feels safe to go and cast his vote, and no party is going to argue that there was massive rigging or any other sort of untoward incidents or whatnot related to the election. Okay. So the first and foremost, the most important point becomes all-inclusive, everybody participating. And when the BNP chose not to participate, because we did go into the interim government, and that's where the whole flip-flopping issue came up. Him, making contradictory statements. The point is, Hussain Mohammad Ershad never made a contradictory statement. He said, we are going to go, and relating to this election, he didn't. Relating to this election, he didn't. And so he said, we are going to go and take part in this interim government. Why? Because if we do, maybe we can give democracy a chance, maybe BNP will be motivated by our joining the interim government and how we are treated in the interim government by the Army League, and the BNP might come in as well. The 2nd of December was the last day to file nomination papers. On the 2nd of December, on the afternoon of the 2nd of December, when BNP leaders, the BNP leadership did not file any nominations, it was clear that it was not going to be an all-inclusive participatory election. So on the morning of the 3rd of December, Hussain Mohammad Ershad came out and declared he is not going to take part in this election. Now, the government, with their strength, with their mighty powers and whatnot, can achieve many things. And they have achieved many things, because we do have an election going on. Right now, the rhetoric has become about the 11th parliamentary election, no longer the 10th, because the 10th parliamentary election is already done. My friend before me, Mr. Talha, or Barrister Talha, already talked about the 6th parliamentary election, which was a pretty interesting election indeed. Right. And the 10th parliamentary election is probably likely to be a similar election, because already the rhetoric is about the 11th parliamentary election and no longer about the 10th. But the Jatiya Party stance about this 10th parliamentary election has not changed. Just because the government has used its power to entice a few people, lure a few people from the party to participate in the election, doesn't mean the Jatiya Party has taken part in the election. And the last point I was supposed to address, what are the minimum expectations and requirements to join the poll? As far as the Jatiya Party was concerned, the minimum expectation was everybody sitting down in dialogue and everybody coming to terms and coming to an agreement to what would be an acceptable election. Unfortunately, we couldn't get everybody to sit together. We tried many times. I personally went over and handed over letters to general secretaries of both the Army League and the BNP. They got the letters, they said thank you for the letters, but that was the end of it. I'm not sure if they even opened up and read the letters. They did hear about the letters because then it came up in the press. But as far as they themselves were concerned, there was no dialogue. Thank you. So as far as they themselves were concerned, there was no dialogue. And even now, there is no dialogue. I mean, we hear that people are talking, the Assistant General Secretary of the UN went and visited. He was supposed to spend 3 days there. He ended up spending 5, I think. And he did get the General Secretaries and some of the senior leaders to sit. But at the time of Taranko's leaving, when the conversation I had with him, he said, there is hope. At least people are sitting. But have you achieved anything? No. And so that's where we are. That's where we are. We need for democracy in Bangladesh, to establish democracy in Bangladesh and for democracy to survive in Bangladesh, we need the parties to start a dialogue. We need the parties to come to terms with what kind of an election would be acceptable to them, and then create that sort of a platform. Because every 5 years we get the same problem. Every 5 years everybody starts saying, we don't want a caretaker government. 5 years ago, the Army League wanted a caretaker government, the BNP didn't. And then the Army League wanted a caretaker government that was well accountable, the BNP didn't. Back in '96, the Army League wanted a caretaker government. All of the rhetoric supporting a caretaker government came from the Army League back in '96. Fast forward to 2013, and all of the rhetoric supporting a caretaker government is coming from the BNP. We're seeing exact same statements. Exact same statements, just from different groups of people.
So can you clarify what you mean by caretaker government?
The system of caretaker government that we used to have, that the 15th Amendment took out of the Constitution.
So in the detail, I'm not aware of what you mean by caretaker.
Oh, it's an interim government that's not part of the elected government. Okay? So the president, does run the state, but the functions of the state are run by people chosen who are chosen as non-political people, technical people. So that's the caretaker government system that we have. And so, if both the parties have a problem with the caretaker government, depending on who's in power and who's not, then certainly we have a problem with the system in place. So what we need to do is come up with a system that's acceptable to everybody. It doesn't matter if they're in power or not. And as a party that has not been in power for 23 years, the Jatiya Party has tried to provide solutions. Unfortunately in our country, do I have time? Yes. Unfortunately in our country, the other two parties, they always get stuck in their own stance. I'm not blaming them for it, because everybody does it. Maybe if the Jatiya Party came to power, they probably would do the same thing. So I don't know. Okay? But we do have that. And we need civil society. We need experts. A lot of people who are probably sitting in this room, the people with the knowledge, with the ability maybe, to sit down, brainstorm, and come up with the sort of solutions that would be acceptable to everybody. But we need to start doing that. And so I guess I'll end my speech or whatever this is with the note that we need sort of organizations and institutions and organizations like British Bangladeshi Alliance that's getting minds together to solve the sort of problems, to come up with solutions with the sort of problems that Bangladesh is faced with, as opposed to sort of doing the political, the infighting and whatnot we have there. Maybe solutions can come from Bangladeshis who are living outside of Bangladesh, who can maybe understand, take a more bird's eye perspective, bird's eye view of what's going on, and might be better able to come up with solutions. Thank you.